Petty revenge with a little bit of pro-revenge? I like to think so. Hello there, beautiful Redditors. I have a story of petty revenge that might include a bit of pro-revenge mixed in. So I grew up in a super abusive and neglectful home that has sent me to literally years of therapy. Lots of CPTSD treatment, anxiety meds, attempted to reconcile with my parents, and was told by them that they meant to be abusive and they wouldn't change their ways, so I went no contact with them. My father in particular is a narcissist that controls the lives of everyone around him, to the point where when I married my husband, my father sat me down while my husband was at work one day and demanded that I get my husband in line and stop letting him be so disrespectful. It was around this point that I started realizing what a large problem we had with my parents, because my mother follows my father's every whim. We spent years trying to set boundaries with them, and after the literal years, my father pounded on the table and said, "I am who I am, and you're not gonna change me." And this shortly after telling me that he meant it when he told me as a child that if you or anyone else ever called CPS on me, I will lie to them and make it look like you are perfectly well taken care of, but after the social worker leaves, you won't be okay and there will be some child abuse. And that he wasn't remorseful for saying that. And honestly, this story is like 1% of the abuse I suffered at his hands and my mother's hands as well, and in just about every single way you can imagine. Physical, emotional, mental, other ways. Yes, you know what I mean. But I'm not trying to trigger anyone. So, where does the revenge part come in? Here we go. I started with a new therapist, specifically a trauma therapist, and she encouraged me to embrace the anger part of healing as part of the grief cycle. And because I have never been allowed to be angry before, because that was dangerous with my father. So, we started talking in one particular session about little things I could do to inconvenience my parents in some way, like giving their numbers to telemarketers or something simple like that. Nothing huge or super destructive or life-altering, just a little something to safely express my anger towards them for the lifetime of pain and suffering they had caused me. One of the things we talked about was signing them up for things like Sample Depends or something like that, so I went home and did some research and discovered an entire website dedicated to different websites and organizations that you could get free stickers from. So, of course I signed my father up for several of them, like 20, 30 of them. And the best part of it is that I signed him up for them under a typo of his name. Think John Smythe for John Smith, which I knew would bother him because he hated it when people would misspell or mispronounce his name, because of course, he's a narcissist. So I sign him up for them and don't hear anything from them, because at this point, we're no contact, but I still think about it at times and giggle to myself or with my husband and friends. At this point, it's pretty much petty revenge, I'm thinking. But a little less than a year later, presumably when their year-long lease was up, we got word that they'd moved. Same area, but yep, they moved. And at first I just thought, okay, so they moved, and didn't think much more of it, but then one day I remembered all of the stickers and thought about the fact that they had lived in an apartment with a very small community stack of mailboxes, and so I like to think in my head that the stickers and continuing missives from those 20 to 30 different companies probably had something to do with it. Especially since my parents are traditionally hoarders and had not one but 2 different garages in their apartment complex full of their crap, and we spent 14 years at our previous house and only left there because my father was robbed at gunpoint one night, so it would have been a massive undertaking to get them to move. So, I do like to imagine that I'm partly responsible for maybe spooking them a little bit out of their fancy apartment. Is this petty revenge or pro-revenge? You tell me. Have a lovely day, Redditors.